please don't run whatever for where there's a case suspected to be a VHF. Genomic sequencing shall be used at all time to complement our epidemiological investigation. I think that must be my last slide. Morgan and colleagues, thank you for listening in to me. And we are still here to listen in, and probably questions might come along. Over to you.
Yes, great. Thanks, Tony. And I want to really appreciate you for bringing out the reference testing. That is very key. I think, colleagues, you've heard, we have said the confidence test is by the reverse transcriptase PCR that is being done. One key thing that comes out is about the complementary testing. We have said these must be done in an Ebola treatment unit. And the last bit again to mention, he brought it out clear, we're dealing with the risk group 4 pathogen that must be manipulated in a BSL-3 lab. Beyond that, BSL-3, BSL-4 labs. These are labs that you look at the infrastructure, equipment, procedure, pastoral protective equipment, the pathogen property, and the containment measures that are put into consideration while dealing with these samples. So we do not want to hear anyone manipulating samples, just refer them. Whether it's plasma, whole blood, do not go and try to separate and get us plasma. We have not requested for that. So at this point in time, allow me call in Joseph Nkodio. He's a laboratory scientist with a public health and microbiology background as well. And he's the national technical lead for biosafety and biosecurity in the country. He sits at the National Health and Laboratory Department. Allow me to invite Joseph to come in right now, take us through biosafety and biosecurity measures regarding Ebola and Marburg disease. Joseph, you're most welcome. Joseph, you're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator. I want to commend the previous presenters for taking us through the wonderful pieces of work in regards to this common challenge, the Ebola outbreak. Colleagues from all over the country, I bring greetings from the Ministry of Health. And since we don't have time, I would like to say all protocol observed, and allow me share with you on issues in regards to biosafety, biosecurity. And I will begin with a statement that, yes, we've had very interesting presentations from our fellow colleagues, and I commend them for that wonderful piece of work. Biosafety, biosecurity comes in to complement those efforts. And I want to say that biosafety, biosecurity practices, I know you've heard about it and you know that these are very critical practices while responding to Ebola virus disease. And it's majorly because of its high transmissibility and the fatality rate. We are expected to do effective containment. I'm privileged that Tony ably explained why we have our mobile labs, and we are not sending we're not moving our samples long distances. I think that is a plus in terms of effective containment. And we need to employ strict adherence to the protocols that minimize exposure risks to our health workforce and the broader community. Colleagues, it is very important that we take the words you've heard from the previous presenters very critically. I want to say that almost all what I'm supposed to present has been taken you through in regards to biosafety, biosecurity. I had been emphasizing issues of biosafety, biosecurity, and I cannot emphasize any further. We are doing this as an orientation to our health workforce, the laboratory practitioners, the laboratory scientists, to make sure you man up with your biosafety practices, because we are focusing on making sure we protect the personnel, preventing the accidental exposure in the due course of our technical work, as we can't run away from this. This is our own, and since Ebola has come, we can't delegate it to anyone. It's our own responsibility. Now, how do we make sure we are not part of the statistics? By making sure we stick to strict adherence of protocols to make sure we don't get exposed to these very dangerous risks as health workers. In biosafety practices, we have around 5 principles which I want you to adhere to, making sure you've understood them clearly, and it is key that you're able to go in and respond to this tragedy, and you don't become part of the statistics. Yes, we know that our nature of work in our different locations or facilities is potential risk, and often exposes us as service providers to this dangerous harm. But for us to be able to understand this, we know that biorisk management involves principal techniques and measures that put in place for safety of the personnel, community, and the security of our valuable biological materials. In biorisk management, I want to make sure I move a bit faster. I want to give you the AMP model. Whether you're doing biosafety or biosecurity, you must be able to conduct a proper risk assessment to identify the hazard in biosafety. In biosecurity, you're identifying the threat and being able to create or identify the mitigations to counteract the identified hazard. While conducting performance, you're trying to check on whether your mitigations have performed, whether your mitigations are working, whether this is an acceptable risk, whether you're able to continue with your practices or otherwise. Next. Yes, as we do our quality laboratory services, I want to emphasize that we have our biosafety, biosecurity considerations that we need to adhere to as we practice the to have you in consideration is to make sure you're trained and tested for competence to implement the biorisk management measures. And part of the competence is making sure you received a certificate in biosafety, biosecurity, having showed or qualified with minimum requirements or the minimum standard. However, in this we also expect you might first, you're trying to support the response. Another consideration is the choice of PPE. I know you know it, that for this particular one, when we are responding to Ebola, we don't use any other PPE. I want to re-echo what Winnie mentioned, and Tony. Please don't just go in because you've been identified to go and respond to Ebola. Make sure you have the required PPE, you have the required expertise, you have a proper orientation so that you can go into support. Also seen that the little information about this agent can also try to challenge the response. So we expect that we have highly competent staff to handle the work in regards to EVD. The other consideration is to have our laboratory personnel, safety practices and techniques, making sure you bare minimum recommended mitigations, what we would call immunizations. Are you immunized against hepatitis B, first of all? Are you immunized against yellow fever? If you are responding, did you in any moment receive the EVD Zaire virus, vaccine? So that we are sure that much as you are getting exposed to now Ebola Sudan, in your system you have minimum mitigations to this challenge. The safety equipment must be deployed based on the thorough risk assessment, like mentioned earlier on. And one of them is the biological safety cabinet. But you remember in our mobile lab, we talked about it being a BSL-3, and it is a containment facility to make sure we are able to work with minimum risk exposure. The other consideration, I know we have waste handlers in our facilities, but I want to emphasize that the waste from all these procedures must be handled by the laboratorians conclusively. Make sure you collect the waste, disinfect it, or incinerate it yourself to create what we call a containment protocol completion, because we don't want you to expose those innocent waste handlers to what you've already contaminated. So I request that all our colleagues who are in response, please make sure you pick interest in the generated waste, make sure we don't have challenges with our other health workers getting exposed to this waste that we are generating. Next. Yes, having shared with you the biosafety considerations, allow me also share with you the biosecurity considerations. I am bearing in mind that this orientation is giving you a clue of the difference between biosafety and biosecurity. Biosafety, where you're protecting yourself as the responder, and biosecurity, where you're protecting what you're dealing with, the samples you're handling, the waste you're handling, the documentation, and those around you. Allow me to take you through the biosecurity consideration. Access to this nature of specimens is strictly by only authorized personnel. If you're not authorized, please don't go and get access to this storage and avoid exposure, since we have different ones. The outbreak specimens are agents of national importance, and we are to keep them in the national specialized repositories in our biobanks after a number of considerations. Biosecurity risk assessment is a must to be carried out and reviewed regularly, including the storage risks. This is done by competent, trained biosecurity officers to make sure of working results, working reports, and with clear risks identified with proper mitigations. Greater security should be set up for our laboratories and storage facilities. Yes, you might have observed this. Control, restricting those it is not denied you facility because of dealing with threat that we are trying to contain. Special facilities, again, adequate funding to ensure and pass up in facilities, read backup of solar to make sure the specimen containment and identify vital hotspots, trying to make sure that and well the free store maintained in security and with the we're talking about the event which specimens and specimens